Namaskar, मैं हूँ रूपाली Suri. Hello and a very warm welcome to all you wonderful people present here and welcome to TIE Global Summit 2020 presented by Control S. Well, today is actually a very exciting day. We have some lovely panel here discussing some lovely enterprising ideas, sharing their knowledge, coming up and exchanging their views, expertise. What a better platform than this to actually, to increase that bar of your acumen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have some experts sitting right here in front of me, and they are here to actually share their cup of knowledge with you guys. In case if you're entrepreneurs, you want to be leaders, or you just are an entertainer just like me, I think everyone has something to take back from this panel discussion. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you a little about TIE. TIE by far is the largest professional and networking conference for entrepreneurs globally. Well, I can go about TIE so much and on. I can be on and on for it. But right now, let's just get on to the panel discussion. And excited to know and excited to hear them, excited to know that what their vision is, excited to know what they have to share with us. And this time, I'm going to call Mr. Mahesh Ramachandran to moderate this session. And if you can enlighten all of us that what this next session is going to be about. I know it is all about entrepreneurs, leaders, investors. I know that there is so much, I didn't even know actually all this while that entrepreneurship has so many aspects attached to it. If you can enlighten this next session that is going to be conducted would be fantastic, sir.
Thank you very much, Rupali, and wonderful introduction. And I'm Mahesh Ramachandran. I happen to be the moderator for this panel. I support TIE as a governing council member of TIE Chennai and also as the special interest group on FinTech. And this session is going to be about in the new normal, the next frontier. The way business are carried and conducted today as a fundamental shift due to COVID-19. In the new normal post-COVID-19 world, what are the paradigm shift we are going to see in FinTech will be discussed by the distinguished panelists. They will speak about some of the global trends that impact FinTech and financial services technology alike. We are actually joined by Ms. Susan Chisti from London, who will provide an overview of global trends in FinTech in the post-COVID world and the new opportunities it creates. Mr. Ramchandran, Group Country Manager, India and South Asia, Visa, will articulate about innovations that drive digital payments growth in the new normal world. This includes contactless for safety, tap to phone, superior user experience, so on and so forth. Mr. Steve Halley will introduce and discuss about Moja Loop, a global reference model for advancing financial inclusion, support Google, Bill Gates Foundation, Modus Box, and such organization. Mr. Siddharth Shetty is here to explain about how DEPA, Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture, plays an important role on India's stack consent layer and how the new NBFC account aggregator license is going to influence the consent layer. That's the theme of the program today. I would shortly be introducing each of the panelists now. Okay, let me start with Suzanne Chisti. Suzanne is CEO of FinTech Circle. She's an investor, best-selling editor, the FinTech book series, non-executive director, Crown Agents Bank, Supply ME PLC, JLG PLC, Company Global and conference speaker in London. And she's been in the FinTech for quite a long time. And she has been running this Europe's first network focused on FinTech investments and the founder of the FinTech Circle Institute, the leading FinTech learning platform offering innovation workshops to C-level executives and FinTech courses. Suzanne is also the co-editor of the bestseller, The FinTech Book, which has been translated into 10 languages and is sold across 107 countries. The Wealth Tech Book, the Insure Tech Book, the Pay Tech Book, and AI Book, and the Legal Tech Book, all are actually a super duper hit. And recently she has actually also co-authored the Dummies book on FinTech. She has also been a FinTech TV commentator on CNBC and is a guest lecturer on financial technology at the University of Cambridge and Warwick Business School. After completing her MBA, she started her career working for a FinTech company before the term fintech was being invented in Silicon Valley 25 years ago. He then worked more than 15 years across Deutsche Bank, Lloyds Banking Group, Morgan Stanley, and Accenture in London and Hong Kong. Susan is an award-winning entrepreneur and investor with strong fintech expertise. She's actually got a big following in the global community of 200,000 fintech entrepreneurs, investors, and financial services professionals globally. So without much ado, I would like to actually start by asking Suzanne the interesting question about what is FinTech Circle and what are the key global trends that Suzanne is actually seeing and what opportunities exist for FinTech in the new normal world. Thank you, Suzanne.
Of course, Mahesh, and thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited to join this very important conference and meet lots of delegates across the world, in India specifically. So thank you, Mahesh, for having and sharing our panel discussion today. So as you said, I launched and I founded FinTech Circle. And what we do is we invest in fintech startups. So we have got an early stage investor network, an angel network, where we find the best fintech companies to back and to invest in. And our goal is to help grow these companies, to help them scale up and become successful in their own sub-sectors, in the financial services industry. And the second thing of what we are focused on, in addition to investing, is education, via our FinTech Circle Institute, where we publish books. We just published the first film on FinTech, in fact, last week. It's called The Future of FinTech. It's a 1-hour film, a co-production between FinTech Circle and ITN, the TV studio here in London. And we are planning another one for next year. So anybody on this panel, who would like to be featured in the global fintech film, we would love to feature more Indian entrepreneurs, Indian companies as well. Please get in touch with me afterwards. And so that's the number 2 is education. And number 3, what we focused on is we work with banks, with large financial institutions who want to reach out to the fintech sector and who want to develop solutions together, either via acceleration programs, incubation programs internally, and who want to know who are the best fintech companies whom they could work with. So we advise them, we help, bring both sides together. And Mahesh, you asked, what the fintech industry is all about. I think it has been booming over the last, 5-6 years since I launched FinTech Circle. And we have seen lots of developments. Initially, 5 years ago, it was all about business to consumer, B2C business models. And it was all the things we all understand because we all are consumers, of financial services. We all save, we all invest, we all borrow sometimes, they have a mortgage or a loan. So all these things which are understandable by the end consumer, they've been booming and have developed very successful business models. And when I think about remittance payments, TransferWise and lots of very good companies in this space. And in terms of financial inclusion, that's a key topic. I know Stephen will talk about later, but we know there are more than 2 billion people worldwide, with no bank accounts. And again, where fintech can make such a difference to people's lives, to their livelihoods, so we've got a hugely important role to play. And what I noticed over the last, 2-3 years, there's much more of a focus on B2B solutions, on really enterprise level fintech solutions, which help banks, insurance companies, asset managers to develop better products, better solutions to their own customers, or lower the costs, of the service delivery, or help those institutions to be more compliant or be compliant at less cost. These are reg tech, legal tech solutions. So we see now that fintech moves into a more complicated space where lots of domain expertise is being required, and where lots of financial institutions, they know that lots of customers are not profitable to service because these customers are just expensive for the bank to service based on their existing high cost infrastructures. But if we replace these, proprietary often very old infrastructures with new fintech solutions, all of a sudden, those banks can service these customer segments in a profitable way. And so that's why I think fintech is so exciting, because it not only changes our personal lives, but it makes the financial services sector actually more profitable, more competitive, and gives us all hope, for a better world.
Fantastic, Suzanne. That was amazing to know about those insights. I'll come back to you in a minute. Before that, I would love to actually introduce Ram. Mr. T.R. Ramachandran, addressed as Ram fondly, is Visa Group Country Manager, India and South Asia. He had progressively senior experience across retail banking, insurance, payments, and fintech. TRR is a strategic thinker with analytical bent of mind and strong execution bias, possesses very strong communication skills and people management abilities, bring a high level of energy, dedication, and integrity to the job. Have had exposure to and understand the retail financial services, payments, and commerce environment across Asia Pacific. Strong believer that people make the biggest difference and a big proponent of authentic leadership. Over the years, Ram has worked with some terrific colleagues and developed some outstanding leaders. Ram's specialties include, but not limited to, product management, franchisee development, relationship management and partnership, portfolio analytics, brand management, sales and distribution, risk and management. Mr. Ram, as a leader in fintech and payment space and as group country manager of Visa, may I request you to give us an overview of your involvement in fintech payments ecosystem? What are the innovations that are enabling digital payments growth in the new normal world? And Ram, you have seen where the payments world is heading, so we would love to hear from you.
Thank you, Mahesh. And Susan, I really enjoyed listening to your overview on fintech. And much like you said, Visa was one of the original fintechs at 1958 when we started, like 62 years ago, when fintech was not a thing. And just the notion of connecting people across the globe through digital payments is what we've been doing for 6 decades now. Mahesh, you asked the question about the pandemic, and I think as I reflect on the fintech and digital payment space, in particular in fintech, over this period of time, 2 seminal movements have happened across the last 10 years. Number one is demonetization, which happened in November of 2016. Mm-hmm. And we are sort of looking at it with sepia tone right now, but remember that 88% of the currency of this country was invalidated overnight. Mm-hmm. And that gave the fillip for digital payments to, like the chief of staff of Obama said, never waste a good crisis. And that sort of was the impetus to a whole host of sort of ecosystem players coming together to develop sort of new and innovative digital payments. Let me give you one example of that. Visa had a QR technology product called mVisa, right? Mm-hmm. And the Reserve Bank of India brought Visa and MasterCard and NPCI and all the organizations together to have a ubiquitous QR standard called Bharat QR, where you can use your bank app to scan, and that QR is valid irrespective of which sort of digital credential is stored, which brand of digital credential is stored in your app, because that sort of reduced the cost of acceptance by making it asset light rather than the need for costly infrastructure. Just one simple example of demonetization. And people started operating not for the first 50 million Indian customers, but progressively going to the sort of next 200 million and then the next 500 million customers to sort of how do we get digital payments across to a wider spectrum of people. Now, as we reflect 8 or 9 months, or probably 10 months into the pandemic right now, if you view digital payments and fintech investments through 2 lenses. Number one, how much VC and PE money has actually come into the space? And Mahesh, you know this better than anybody. There is close to $1.5 billion which have just come into this space in the last 7 months. And there's a plethora of people sort of operating in this space. Number two, these solutions have become more democratized and more reaching the sort of last mile. For example, let's take contactless payments. As cash becomes dirty, quote unquote, and people are, not used to want touchless sort of convenience, contactless payments is now, really taking the market by storm. And Susan, from the UK experience, you will know how ubiquitous contactless payments are. And that's sort of wending its way across many parts of Asia. It's already very big in Australia. It's like really big in India right now. And there's scope to do that. And by the way, within contactless payments, here's the real cool part, here's the fun part of innovating for a digital payments company, right? The latest innovation is tap to phone, which is converting the Android phone of a merchant, NFC enabled, into a device which can actually accept contactless payments. So you actually don't need an EDC machine or a POS machine to tap it. You actually tap your mobile phone against the merchant's mobile phone, which is also NFC enabled, and the NFC secure element in the phone is actually capable of receiving sort of contactless payments. That I would say, and tap to phone is a sort of great example of native innovation in a secure fashion, leading up to that. Number three, I'd say that the steps we have taken in e-commerce is nothing short of revolutionary. Of course, the first revolution you could argue was when the likes of Amazon, Flipkart, and the like started this unique cash on delivery, because people didn't want to sort of pay with their debit or credit cards or UPI, whatever it was. So the delivery chappie would come to your house and you sort of actually give currency. But with the pandemic, and that has forced cash on delivery to reduce, and payment on delivery systems to really proliferate, be it through link payments, be it through QR payments, be it through e-commerce payments. So e-commerce is really taking off. And without taking too much time, the last point I want to convey is that as we speak to solve for the next 500 million people, right, we have to take payments where commerce is and where transactions are, as opposed to asking commerce and transactions to come where payments are.
Amazing.
That's a unique sort of distinction, because nobody wakes up in the morning and says, hey, I have to make a payment digitally and be cool about it. You want to buy a book, you want to buy a cup of coffee, you want to pay for your goods and services. Small artisan and merchants want other people to buy their products. That's where the commerce is happening. So what does that mean for us? That means that conversational commerce is the next sort of touchstone, because voice is used, video is used. Nobody's teaching the next 500 million Indians how to use TikTok, for example. I know it's a bad word now, it's banned, but when it was still not banned, right? But people figure it out themselves. So can we make it so native and so intuitive? Because digital inclusion, I firmly believe, is an integral part of financial inclusion. And those who are digitally excluded, I would argue it's very tough to get them sort of financially included. And steps towards that direction of making it more ubiquitous, more convenient, and more intuitive are all the sort of barriers which we are trying to overcome. And the last but not least, I want to end by saying, in solving all of this, we have to firmly remember that security has to be at the cornerstone of what we do. Because particularly in developing economies, as people are taking baby steps towards digital payments, it just takes something to go wrong to people say, I told you so, let's go back to cash. And none of us wants that. So we have to play at the intersection set of marrying ubiquity, convenience, and security. Let me stop there and hand back to you, Mahesh.
Wonderful, Ram. This is fantastic. If I may, I'm going to use your quote, take payments to where the commerce is. So amazing quote from that. And I think there's a lot of interesting insights that you actually shared with us. And thank you for that. Based on the available time, I might come back to you for more. I am now pleased to introduce Siddharth Shetty. Siddharth is a fellow at iSpirit Foundation, a non-profit technology think tank. He works on India Stack. Most of us know about India Stack. It is a set of open APIs comprised of Aadhaar, eKYC, eSign, BIM, UPI, and Digital Locker that allows governments, businesses, startups, and developers to utilize a unique digital infrastructure to solve India's hard problems in financial inclusion. As part of India Stack, Siddharth's primary focus is on empowering every Indian with control of their financial, health, telecom, skills, and education data through the Data Empowerment and Protection Architecture. Besides, for DEPA, he is also working on the technology for the Public Credit Registry by Reserve Bank of India that would be a real-time registry of all credit contracts, resulting in widespread access to credit by eliminating information asymmetries. Digital Sky, the digital infrastructure that would enable safe operations of millions of drones in Indian airspace, and the national health stack that would lower costs, improve access, and improve quality of healthcare for hundreds of millions of Indians. It is a great pleasure to have you, Siddharth. So for the benefit of wide range of audience, can you please explain about your role at iSpirit Fellow and the work you do on the consent layer of India Stack? What is the impact of DEPA standards on FinTech? Also touch upon the NBFC account aggregator license.
Surely. Thank you so much, Mahesh, for inviting me to be a part of the panel today. iSpirit is a nonprofit technology think tank. We take a long-term 20 to 30-year view of societal problems. And one of the key areas for us in the Indian context is financial inclusion, primarily democratizing credit to both individuals and small businesses at scale. Our belief is that this can only be achieved with new financial products, new credit products being created. And that can only happen if there is a jugalbandi, a partnership between public infrastructure at the base and a range of private innovators, some of whom are on the call and many of you listening in, that build on top of this public infrastructure and then take these solutions to the consumer. This isn't new. What we are using, Zoom runs over SIP. SIP is an open standard public infrastructure on top of which Zoom and a whole range of other clients are built. Same as in the case of email, the internet that we use is public infra, or even GPS, public infra on top of which private innovators build Google Maps. Now, in that context, over the past 10 years, India has built out a range of platforms. These include Aadhaar, that allowed us to accelerate financial inclusion by the opening of bank accounts by over 36 years. If you see the latest BI Bank of International Settlements report, infrastructure that allows Indians to transact with the financial services system around eKYC. Some of you may have experienced this when you got a Jio SIM card, and that allowed Jio to scale up to 100 million subscribers in a similar number of days. eSign, which is a way to do digital signatures on your phone, or even more recently, UPI. For all of you using Google Pay, WhatsApp Pay, Beam, and various apps, Paytm, all of it runs on a common public infrastructure run by the National Payments Corporation of India. And last month, India did over 2 billion transactions on UPI. And our belief is that still early days, we'll soon get to 1 billion a day. Now, as these transactions permeated, as connectivity started deepening within the country, 4G access started to increase, what we noticed was that Indians were becoming data rich at an exponential pace. But the paradigm was slightly different. So in developed economies where the individuals had high amounts of per capita income, when they became data rich, data was fundamentally used to shape their spending patterns through an advertisement-driven business model. But that's not the case in India. You have very low levels of discretionary income. Most Indians don't have money to spend significantly. And therefore, we felt we had to invert this entire paradigm, where data, instead of being used to sell things to the user, is actually used to empower them to access better financial services by eliminating the information asymmetry gaps, bridging trust, access better health services, and other services that are socioeconomically important to them. And that's how the data empowerment and protection architecture came to life, what's more commonly known as the consent layer of India Stack. And the way that works is essentially think of a UPI payment where on a third-party app, let's imagine Beam for a moment, or say Google Pay or any of these, right? They don't sit on your money. They're not participating in the money flow. All they do is you discover, you link your bank account, and you give permission saying, hey, you can debit my account and credit this to the end destination, which might be a merchant. And magically in real time, the money flows without that app getting into the middle of this. Now, when you generalize this in the context of data, you have a similar set of problems, right? So in the current world of data sharing, it's completely broken. You either run around to your bank, your mutual fund, and other providers physically to their branches and take printouts or get your passbook printed on, or you run around to them digitally, multiple portals, and then take PDF downloads, create the folder, and then upload all of this to a lender. Or even worse, if you go to a lender, or let's say someone to manage your wealth, they'll ask you for your username and password of different accounts, and then they screen scrape and put it together. And in this day and age of technology, that's horribly primitive. And so that's where India created this new institutional innovation called account aggregators. These are licensed by RBI, but it's an interregulatory decision. So about 4 years back, in a very historic move, RBI, SEBI, PFRDA, IRDA, along with the Ministry of Finance, came together to empower individuals with control over their financial data and gave rise to the account aggregator framework. As things stand, 4 account aggregators have got their operational license from RBI. I think there are about another 3 or 4 that have an in-principle approval, and many more have applied. And the way it works is you can go to any account aggregator of your choice. India is extremely diverse, so we don't expect only one market player. We need multiple who will create self-service and assisted modes. Discover where all your data resides. So your data remains at source. It could reside with a bank, with a mutual fund, going forward with a telecom company. The same framework was also more recently announced on August 15th, as some of you may know, by Prime Minister Modi for health information as well. So this cuts across sectors. But in a very simplistic manner, you can register with an account. What does it mean for me as a consumer? It means that you can now, going forward, register yourself with an account aggregator, discover and link your bank accounts and other types of accounts, and then electronically, at one click, share your information in real time with a lender who will create new cash flow lending products and maybe give you a decision on the back of your cash flows rather than your collaterals and assets, which we know most Indians don't have. Maybe it could be a better personal finance management experience, maybe a robo-advisor. We expect a Cambrian explosion of innovation to happen on new types of companies that consume this data with the consent of the individual. And today, as things stand, the largest banks in India have adopted this system, both on the public as well as private sector side. And this also includes taxation information through GST. And our sense is by about end December, over 400 million bank accounts, 8 million actively transacting GST accounts would be a part of this network. You'd see 2 AA apps, account aggregator apps in the Play Store that consumers could use, discover, link, and share their financial information seamlessly. And India is one of the frontiers in this globally. If you look at it, a lot of countries have now reached out to India to harmonize and adopt the same technical standards. Australia, UK, a bunch of more countries in the EU. And what this means is this facilitates not only interoperability for domestic data sharing transactions, but you could even have cross-border data flows with the individual's consent fall in place in the coming years. So that's the new ecosystem that's coming up. Much what UPI did for the payments ecosystem, our sense is account aggregator will bring about a similar innovation for fintechs and, of course, at the end of the day, for consumers as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Siddharth. I think your contribution for the promotion of this ecosystem is much appreciated. I'm sure that a lot of our audience learned quite a few things about the consent layer. And because of lack of time, we are not able to expand on that. I'm going to straight move on to a next interesting topic, Moja Loop. And we have Stephen Halley, Economic Development and Modus Box. Steve's interest includes Moja Loop, digital financial inclusion, where he builds partnerships, strategy, funding, and products to better serve low-income clients. Steve Halley has been leading diverse mission-driven teams for 18 years in 9 different countries between work in the government, non-profit, and private sector in Europe, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, leading teams as large as 350 people. His work has varied from venture investing to humanitarian assistance to digital finance product management. His focus at Modusbox in digital finance is helping governments and financial institutions in transitional environments to build partnership, strategy, funding, and products to better serve low-income clients. Steve holds a bachelor's degree in applied mathematics from West Point and a master's in theoretical mathematics from the University of Padua. I'm very privileged to have you, Steve. May I request you to start by explaining your involvement from the very early stages of the evolution of Moja Loop and how your role at Modusbox is helping its implementation. For the understanding of wider audience, you may also want to explain about what is Moja Loop, how Moja Loop open source software is empowering organizations to create interoperable digital payment systems to increase financial inclusion.
Okay, thank you, Mahesh, and I'll try to. I apologize if my connection is not good. If you can't see, I'm sitting in a hut in South Goa, not known for its best internet in the country. But considering we're serving people with worse internet than me, I think it's a good thing to practice. Okay, so the first question is, how did I get involved in this Moja Loop thing? So I was working as head of product for a large mobile money company, for those in India, similar to Paytm, and really started understanding that in order for me to serve the people I wanted to serve, in particular things like, how do I serve microfinance clients? How do I serve people who aren't gamers or trying to order food online, who are already pretty much well served by the banking industry? And I started understanding the only way I could serve them was to be interoperable with my competitors. And that was something that we weren't so excited to do as the company I was working for, to believe it or not. And so I actually left to focus on interoperability. And I continue to say what we really need is something that can reduce the cost of driving interoperability projects and make it so we can move out from being like slide decked to death with interoperability ideas and really get to practical learning on interoperability. And then fortuitously, the day after I quit, the Gates Foundation announced the Moja Loop product being released 3 years ago. And I jumped at the chance to say, okay, is this going to work for what I'd like to do in Myanmar? And it's been quite a journey, but I think we're on a good path with Myanmar. And luckily, the experience there has allowed me to take the experience of getting all of the industry around it and educating the regulators in Myanmar and take that to a number of other markets. And so that's been my main role, is helping countries understand and industry groups understand how they can use this as a tool to drive interoperable payments in a way that maybe people aren't thinking of. So that's been my role going forward, or in the past and going forward. And so like you said, the first thing we should do is introduce what is Moja Loop. So Moja Loop is an open source enterprise software that offers real-time payments. So what are real-time payments? Real-time payments are push payments from one account to another account, the kind of mobile money experience. And real-time means real-time clearing. It means if I send you, Mahesh, money from my account to your account, you have the money right now. You can use that money right now. You can cash it out. You can send it to somebody else. That's what we mean by real time. And we're talking real time has to be within a second. It can't be real time like in a couple minutes, because if you're standing in a small shop trying to buy eggs, you can't wait a few minutes. It has to be right now, and it has to be a lot of other things. And there are a lot of examples of that. There's mobile money. There's things like M-Pesa for Americans. There's Venmo. It's great, but everybody has to be on the same system. And that's what we're trying to break down. So a lot of you know what real-time payments are. The UK has faster payments, and those of us in India, we have UPI and IMPI. Is not every country has over 1 billion people, and not every country has folks like Siddharth who are driving this for the country. And how do we replicate that India experience of going to 2 billion transactions a month like we are in other countries without having as much money and an army of incredible payments experts like India does? How do we do it for the rest of the world? And like we spoke about, like Suzanne spoke about, there's 2 billion people who are unbanked. And as Ram mentioned, we have to meet them where they are. Where they are is on mobile money, is on microfinance. They are not being served by the largest banks, and they will never be served by the largest banks. And so the technology that's going to connect all of these institutions has to be built for those institutions. Banks are going to be easy. The banks have decent technology. They have enough money. They're going to be able to connect to it. But we have to build a technology that connects them, that is focused on the institutions that are currently serving the low-income communities and focus on the products that are serving low-income communities. Don't get me wrong. I love the fact that it is super easy for me to pay for my Zomato through my HDFC account using my GPay app. That is amazing, but that's not what the low-income people need, not only in India, but anywhere else. So we've got to focus on the use cases that low-income people are focused on, without keeping in mind that there's still a large number of us that need to order our food delivery. So that's what Mojaloop largely is an open source enterprise solution started by the Gates Foundation. And Modusbox was one of the initial technology companies that helped do a lot of the funded development of Mojaloop. In fact, I think we've built about 90% of it. We're also the company that's doing all of the current commercial implementations, but we really hope that once it grows, there's going to be competitor companies to Modusbox doing services work like that. Let's see. So the last thing about Modusbox, I mean, so a lot of people say, wait, but it's open source, and that's kind of scary because we're talking about payments, but not so much anymore. And one of the things that we've learned about open source enterprise technologies over the past 20 years is what you need to have are reputable and accountable firms who are able to provide support services on that enterprise open source. And we have plenty of examples over the past 15 years, like Red Hat, MuleSoft, WSO2, who are offering excellent enterprise, affordable enterprise open source solutions that are fully supported just like a proprietary solution is, but allow the flexibility of the user to be able to say, you know what, I'm really not happy with the support you're giving, I'm going to switch to somebody else. Expand that to national infrastructure. Mm-hmm. You sign up with a technology provider for national infrastructure, you're stuck with them, because once all the banks and everyone else has spent the money connected to them, you're stuck. And so by switching to open source, you allow, if you don't like the support that Modusbox is giving you, great, fire us and hire somebody better and cheaper, and you don't have to change the entire infrastructure of your country. So just the last bit I'll say about Mojaloop is, again, it started as an open source project. It's now a fully fledged foundation that includes the Gates Foundation, Omidyar, the Omidyar Network, Google, PhonePe, and Ripple. So if there's any ideas about how similar this is to the UPI model, having PhonePe and Google should be a sign of this is how they expect to expand the success that they've had in India to other countries. And all of the functionality that we see that's been successful in UPR, we are actually building into Mojaloop. So I hope that cleared things up. I could go into a lot of the technical details, but I don't think anybody on this call cares. But that's basically what Mojaloop does and how we're trying to serve those 2 billion people who are unincluded. And I'll talk last little bit about COVID-19, and we talked about funds disbursement. And one of the biggest things that people need right now is cash in hand. And unfortunately, like I said, where these clients are now is with mobile money, but mobile money is not connected in the financial system. And what's happening around the world, and I know because I've worked on a lot of these projects around the world, is even if you're using mobile money to disperse emergency cash because of COVID-19, what you're basically, what the governments are saying is you have to open an account with this financial institution in order to receive your money. And it just doesn't feel right to any of us. The client should be able to choose which mobile money in their village has the best service. And then they should be able to tell the government, this is my mobile money account, give me my money here. The same way as most of us, if we receive money from the government or anyone, we get to choose which account we want that money delivered to. It should be the same for low-income people, just like we have. So that is, sorry, as quick as I can talk about Mojaloop.
Oh, thank you so much, Steve. I know that you are so passionate about it, and thank you so much for enlightening us about Mojaloop and the potential it has to increase financial inclusion, and wonderful to know that you have been able to manage from a low bandwidth. So that's how it's going to be, I think, for Mojaloop. I know that time is not adequate to bring out more from the expertise of the distinguished panelists. Hopefully, we'll have more opportunities to listen to these leaders in future. Once again, I would like to thank Susan, Ram, Siddharth, and Steve for sharing their insight on the FinTech's future and innovations happening there. Thank you to all the organizers and the audience and friends who helped in organizing this panel. Hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.